Good evening, everyone. This is Avram Rothman speaking, and we're here tonight to continue our discussion and our interviews, where we get to meet some of the really most illustrious leaders, Jewish leaders of our time. If you've been with us over the past few weeks, you know that we've interviewed the Chief Rabbi of South Africa. We've interviewed a number of different people throughout actually throughout the world. We were in New Zealand one week, and we've had the opportunity to meet really some of the most interesting and really most illustrious of the Jewish leaders in the world today. And that's the same this evening. This evening, we have the pleasure to be able to spend some time with Rabbi Stephen Burg, who is the Director General of Aish Torah Global. And Rabbi Burg is with us tonight from New Jersey, although he has a home in New Jersey and he also lives in Jerusalem, where he works in Aish Torah, overlooking the Kosel. He has just for the last number of years taken over really running Aish Torah in all different ways. We're going to let him explain that, but a little bit about him is first is he's really had a very fast rising career, having worked with the National Council of Synagogue Youth, that's NCSY, with the Orthodox Union, with the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and I'm sure there were other institutions, but he's worked his way up and now has really one of the greatest positions in the Jewish community. Great, not because it's easy, but great because it's influential. And it was certainly one that it was quite, I would say, quite difficult while exciting to take over. Here, one could understand that a number of years ago, a number of decades ago, Rabbi Noah Weinberg of blessed memory really developed the concept of Aish Torah, both as a movement and a yeshiva, and has found enormous worldwide success in what he's done with creating all the branches of Aish Torah, the yeshiva of Aish Torah, and many of the organizations that we know of today, such as Honest Reporting and Hasbara, were all organizations that were really were under the from the students of Aish Torah who found a problem in the world, and Rabbi Weinberg encouraged them to go out and face that problem. And so there have been many, many, many groups that have been created. Upon Rabbi Weinberg's passing, Aish Torah ran for a couple of years, but clearly needed a strong leader to come in. And the board of Aish Global got together and was able to convince Rabbi Burg to come and to take over. Over that period of time, I've had the pleasure to meet with him a number of times, and it really is a pleasure. I've really had the occasion to watch him in action, to listen to him speak, to see him working with all different types of groups, but also to take the mantle and to be able to take an organization with enormous potential and to begin it, to reform it again, to get back on that path where it is going to, again, really be one of the major institutions of Jewish outreach in the world. So that's enough for me, but just before I start, I'm going to mute everyone. And if it does mute Rabbi Burg, please, Rabbi Burg, if you would unmute yourself. Now, throughout the time, if people would like to ask a question, they can write to me through the chat. And based on the amount of time we have, I will certainly allow people to ask questions to Rabbi Burg if the time allows. And at that time, you'll be able to unmute yourself. So now I'm going to mute everyone, and we're going to have the opportunity to meet Rabbi Stephen Burg. So Rabbi Burg, welcome to our Sunday night program.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be here, and especially I can consider Rabbi Rothman to be not only one of the greatest public rabbis in North America in terms of his warmth, his kindness, and his scholarship, but also a close personal friend. The two of us, and I'm in Toronto, try to catch lunch together. We're usually at the same exact restaurant every time that we both like. But it's an honor to be here with your holy congregation and with you, Holy Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Everyone should know that I didn't have to pay him a lot of money to say that, just a little bit. But it was very nice. So Rabbi Burg, could you just give us a little bit about your family structure and a little bit of your background before we get into your work at Aish Torah?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Grew up in Brooklyn. My father was a pulpit rabbi. And matter of fact, he's closing in on 45 years that he served in the same shul in Brooklyn. And went to Israel for 2 years, came back and walked into a Shabbaton run by NCSY and fell in love and stayed there for about 22 years. I was the assistant director in the Central East region. That's Detroit, Cleveland, Columbus, that area. I lived in Detroit for a time. And then I was the director of West Coast NCSY. That goes from San Diego up to Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, out to El Paso, Texas. And then eventually I became the international director of NCSY. And concurrently, my last probably 4 or 5 years, I was also the managing director of the Orthodox Union, the OU. And so that was about 22 years. You know, married, 6 kids. My wife was always my partner in everything we did. My smicha is from Yeshiva University. That's where my master's also is from in medieval Jewish history. And then after the OU, after 22 years, I went to work for the Simon Wiesenthal Center. I ran their East Coast operation, their lobbying. We had a museum in Manhattan. We, did training for law enforcement, tolerance training, all kinds of interesting things. And that's pretty much where Aish Torah found me. I remember Elliot Matthias, those Elliot Matthias, who started Hasbro Fellowships. Elliot took me out to lunch and said, we have this position at Aish, we're looking for a CEO. And then I started this process where I met, without exaggeration, hundreds of people from the organization, from all over. And then I started a couple of months later, and I just celebrated 5 years about a month ago.
Well, that's wonderful, and certainly your effect on the organization has been profound. In fact, I thought maybe we could just spend a bit of time in the beginning to discuss that. Everyone knows that Rabbi Weinberg was a brilliant man, also a real visionary who was able to really see the future of the outreach organizations and how they worked, created institutions throughout North America and in South Africa, and I'm sure other countries, including the one in Toronto, which when I started here, he called it really one of his main branches. He himself had been in Toronto and considered it a very important part. Well, certainly upon his passing, his vision continued, but it needed to be reined in, I would say, and carried on. And when you got there, you found an institution, I'm sure, with some wonderful people involved who are all looking to change the world. But it was up to you to come in and sort of tame it a bit and to get people moving in one direction. Could you comment a bit about some of the things that you faced and that you dealt with when you first came 5 years ago to work in Aish Torah?
Sure, absolutely. Look, I think Rav Noach Weinberg, to say he was one of a kind is an understatement. Anyone that's read his biography that just came out a few months ago, just get a sense. I know because I've spoken to so many rabbinic friends who didn't really know Rav Noach the way a lot of us knew Rav Noach. And through that biography, they've gotten this sense of his genius and his vision. And anytime someone had a good idea, well, okay, let's do that. He would just encourage people to go out. And I was certainly, I think what I was most taken by about Aish Torah as I started to learn more about the organization was that sense of achrayas, that sense of taking responsibility, where they felt that there's a problem, go solve it, which is unusual. It's really unusual to have that type of passion for so many different things. And but I think what happened with Aish is it's not so complex. When I talk to business people all the time, they understand it. Really, Aish was a small organization that became really large, and internally never had a chance to catch up to that. And when Rav Noach was there, so really everything revolved around here because he was a charismatic founder. And once he was taken out of the equation, things started to float a little bit, and it got a lot more difficult. And we needed to really consolidate and kind of put structure in. What I tell people all the time is my job is to create structure without losing the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Because you don't want to kill the spirit of Aish. The spirit of Aish, I like to tell people that when they started the first branch, the first major branch was Toronto, but the first actual branch was St. Louis, right? It came before Toronto. But I always tell people that when they started the branches, Noach would put a rabbi on a plane and he'd give him a parachute. And he would say, there's a 50-50 chance it's going to open. Good luck. And he'd push him out, And that's how we started the branches. And, it was a really a certain, conquering the West, Wild West type of spirit of going out there and building things. But at a certain point, you know, as you get larger, and this happens in Silicon Valley all the time, as you get larger, you need to take a step back and say, okay, how do we structure this thing to get to the goals that we want to get to? And you know, I have found the folks at Aish, they want to win. Morning, noon, and night, they want to serve the Almighty. They want to bring about great things to Jewish people. They want to protect Israel. They want to do all the right things. And so, you know, if we just harness that energy and work together, there's really nothing we can't accomplish.
Yeah, and I think that's really evident. In fact, you know, I know that, you know, for a while, it was very important for Aish Torah to support the branches that they had. But then over the last little while, I'm starting to notice a lot of the writing and the photographs that you publish in in some of your weekly publications are dealing with Latin America. And it seems that there's quite a bit of expansion of Aish in Latin America. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. You know, currently, I'll tell you the easiest way. This is the way I explain it to people. Aish operates in 3 languages. We operate in English, Hebrew, and Spanish. Those are our 3 languages. And the truth is, we get approached all the time. There was a time in our history we did some French. We did a lot in Russia. There were other times like that. But today, we really operate in those 3 languages. And what that really means is, you know, if you come to the yeshiva in Israel, we have boys from Latin America and boys from North America, English and Spanish. So we're focused on North America. We're focused on English-speaking countries like England, Australia, and South Africa. They're all the branches. Israel, we could talk a little bit later about this. Israel, we're phenomenally successful at doing work all over Israel. And then Latin America is for the Spanish speakers. And we've started, at one point in the last couple of years, we had 4 different building projects down there. We started 3 different new branches. We hadn't really had a branch in a lot of years. And then we started a second branch in a place called Interlomas in Mexico, where more of the young Jewish professionals live. And we actually bought and built a property out there to service them. We started a branch for the first time in Buenos Aires. If you know anything about Latin America, half of the Jewish population in Latin America lives in Buenos Aires. In Argentina, most in Buenos Aires. So we started a branch in Buenos Aires. We're actually in the middle of completing a shul. Unfortunately, we thought we were going to have the Hanukkah Bayit already, but because of Corona, obviously that's impossible. So, you know, stay tuned. You know, hopefully 6 months a year, we'll have that Hanukkah Bayit, and you're all invited to come down to Buenos Aires. We finished a shul in Santiago. The main Sephardic and Ashkenazi shul in Santiago is Aish Torah. And San Diego, it sounds a little strange, but there was a group of Mexican Jews who live in San Diego who started the branch there. We've also had a building project there. And so we've always had that connection there. We have a Spanish program in Aish, and a lot of these Jewish millennials, when they come to Israel, they come to Aish because we function Spanish, the largest Spanish Balchuva yeshiva, and we get a lot of them. It's very interesting because when you go that far down south, when you're in Argentina and you're in Chile, the seasons are reversed. So we get their summer programs in December, January. You'll see a ton of Spanish speakers at Aish there for their summer participating. So it's been great. You know, I've spent a lot of time down there. I was very blessed when we did the Hanukkah Bayit in Santiago. I brought Stuart and my good friend Stuart and Andrea Heitman came down with me. We did the Hanukkah Bayit. They were real troopers because it was an entire weekend of Spanish speeches, and none of us spoke Spanish. So they were amazing. And then we went over to Buenos Aires to see the new shows being built there. I took them for a tour. And they're great Jews down there. Really, you know, the Latin Americans, there's such heart, there's such spirit. There's a lot of love there. And it's been a pleasure to work with them. And so has been a big focus of ours in terms of helping them out down there and building it up.
Well, it's wonderful to hear about the expansion in these areas. It's something that I think for many of us who've been involved in outreach, it was a pipe dream. We never expected to be able to see that happen in these countries, and now it's amazing to see, and it's really an example of how Aish really is global. So you did mention about Israel. You know, when I was in my late teens, you know, everybody was out trying to find themselves, and you found. And the year after people graduated high school, they'd be going to India, they'd be going to Tibet, they'd be going all over trying to discover themselves. And very often they would stop off in Israel. And through this, Aish Torah and many of the other institutions would be able to find young men who are interested in trying to discover who they are. But then time changed, and we saw a very serious decline in the attendance in the yeshivas in Israel, the outreach yeshivas in Israel, and the approach that had to be taken because people changed, and you didn't have people going to India looking to find themselves in that way anymore. But yet I see that while it was clear that Aish Torah suffered from that for a while, it seems to be booming now. And it's almost as if you can't find a seat. Could you really speak a bit about what's gone on in Aish Torah in Israel and what have made that happen, that it's such a radical difference?
Yeah, it's every point that you just said in that question was so important. The development of Aish Torah. First of all, it's absolutely true. You cannot find a seat in Aish-based measures. So much so that we've actually put tables in the lobby. Now, Corona obviously affected us, but one thing I will tell you, and we should all feel very, very proud of this, as a member of the Aish community, we had one of the only yeshivas in the entire world that stayed open throughout the entire Corona. And through Pesach, through everything, and we had about 100 guys that were left there. So a lot of people went home, but a lot of guys, they're post-college, post-graduate school, this is their home. They really had nowhere to go. And we said, okay, just hang tight, we're gonna take care of you. And it was not simple. A lot of, we followed all the rules, social distancing. We had to get special permits for our staff to go back and forth to make food for these guys. They had to run their own seders, and they had to, there was a lot of stuff going on, but it was really amazing. Also to the point that with shuls closed across the globe, we had a young man named Evan who was saying Kaddish for thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world, because we had this yeshiva functioning and the minyan was functioning. And it was just an amazing, I can't tell you how many people said that, that their loved one that passed away would be so touched that this young man was saying Kaddish across from the Western Wall. So yeah, the yeshiva is strong. It's packed. Matter of fact, in the next couple of weeks, we're getting another 100 guys, so we'll be up to 200. And then, we'll grow from there, hopefully, as things move forward. But the challenge, as you said, is that Aish was built in a time of truth seekers. People were coming to the Western Wall. They were traveling around to the Far East. They were trying to find themselves. They'd show up at the wall, and then Mayor Schuster would tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, would you like to hear a rabbi? And that the rest would be history. And that changed because people don't really do that as much. They go on organized trips with Birthright, which is an amazing thing, although it's not simple to have Birthright come through the building and things like that. I will tell you what I think, and we're going to be investing a lot more in this as time goes on, is that the new Western Wall is social media. If you want to find people that are searching, they're all on social media. And I'll even take it a step further, right? For the first time in Jewish history, you can be in contact with every single Jew in the world because everyone is on social media. And so the numbers going up have a lot to do. Number one is we up the quality of the yeshiva. We brought in as Rosh Yeshiva Berkowitz, who's one of the most phenomenal Rabbanim and Gedolim in the world, who's just lit the whole yeshiva on fire. So we increased that, and we have an admissions. Believe it or not, we never had an admissions department. Now we have someone for admissions. So we cleaned up our act. But even today, you can find through social media. There's so many people searching, finding this, and we, and when someone shows an interest, we interview them and we speak to them, and we really, make it easy for them to come on board. One of the things, some of the guys we get are not young, or they're postgraduate school, or we had one fellow that came to join us that worked for Senator Ted Cruz for 6 years. And so, one of the things that we tell them is like, okay, the dorm might not be for you, Airbnb. And you have young professionals, millennials, get an Airbnb, come to yeshiva, we'll work it out for you. It doesn't have to always just be the same exact way. So I think those things have been really incredible. And again, once they get into the yeshiva, they get into the base medrash, and they understand that they're surrounded by people that care about the Jewish people. They're surrounded by people that want to help the Jewish people. There's that sense in the yeshiva, you stand in the base medrash, that we have to, roll up our sleeves and do good in the world. That speaks to people's soul, like right straight to their heart. And so, yeah, the yeshiva, thank God, is just grown, and I think it's going to grow more and more. We just have to, we have to buy a couple more apartments for dorms and other stuff. We just, have to figure out the logistics of it, but there's no doubt in my mind it's going to grow.
Well, it's wonderful to hear, because I know that many of the outreach yeshivas in Israel are still struggling, but that AISHs have been able to find that formula to be able to sustain and to grow is really wonderful. What you mentioned, Rabbi Berkowitz, I didn't really go into it, but of course, Rabbi Noah Weinberg, when he started Aish Torah, he had the role basically of being both the man who ran the institution and also the Rosh Yeshiva, the one who taught. He set the style of learning. He would answer questions for people. He was a giant. I mean, I know the one occasion when I was sent to Israel to get to learn with him. I spent 10 days with him, and while we sat in his office learning, it took me a day to realize it. But whatever we learned, if it was Shulchan Aruch, if it was Chumash, if it was Talmud, I'd have a book and he wouldn't, and he would quote as if he had it in front of him. So he was an extraordinary fellow, and was even now is not recognized for the greatness that he had. His loss. You can't just put anybody in a place like that. You need somebody who's charismatic, somebody who's brilliant, somebody who knows how to deal with the modern world, knows how to deal with the observant world, and is also respected by that world, and is able to deal with the guy coming in off the street. And of course, this all embodies Rabbi Berkowitz, but perhaps you could tell us a bit about that search that you had, and why it was specifically that Rabbi Berkowitz was the one that was chosen.
So, look, I'll be honest, it wasn't much of a search, because when I came into Aish Torah, first I started with Shmuel Kamenetsky, one of the Gedolei Ador, and he said, you need Rabbi Berkowitz to be the Rosh Yeshiva. Then I spoke to all the Aish guys, and they all said, we need Rabbi Berkowitz to be the Rosh Yeshiva. And I started picking up on this theme that would just play over and over and over again, that Rabbi Berkowitz is the person that everyone wanted. Rabbi Berkowitz, came from the Mir, and at first he started working for Rav Noach's wife's school, Iyat, and then Rav Noach realized how talented he was and grabbed him over to the yeshiva. And he was at the yeshiva many, many years until he went out and started his own outreach training kollel. And everywhere I turned, everyone said Rabbi Berkowitz is the person. So it took me a good 4 years on working on him and getting things straightened out, etc. But, I had met with many Gedolim, right? Many great rabbis, and you would talk to them about Kiruv. And they all liked Kiruv. But when you talk to Rabbi Berkowitz, he was in love with Kiruv. Rabbi Berkowitz in his office today, behind him, he's got a map of the demographics of the Jewish people around the world. And he basically wants to know, what are we doing to reach out to these Jews around the world? That's the captain of the ship that we needed at Aish Torah. Aside from the fact that he is an incredible Talmudic scholar and just brilliant and wise and all those things, and but it's all those things plus he just has that caring and heart that feels for every Jew, and that's he had to be the leader of Aish Torah.
I see. He certainly was or is an extraordinary fellow. Very presents himself very well, and really seems to understand the outreach world. A real special man that way, and I'm looking forward to being able to have some involvement with him myself. Although I do know that from years ago he made a commitment that he's not prepared to leave Israel. So we probably won't meet him here in Toronto, but certainly on the occasion that I get there, I'm going to spend the time doing so, and hopefully one day we'll bring a group with us to be able to spend some time and get to know him.
He has not left Israel in almost 45 years. So chances are, but look, one of the great things about him is he's so technologically savvy that he's on Zoom. Before everyone else was on Zoom for Corona, he had Zoom conversation with his students all around the globe. So he's very in tune to everything going on. But as a practical matter, he is in Israel.
Yeah, well, but nevertheless, he certainly seems to be the most suited, and will be an extraordinary figure to bring Aish Torah into the future. You did mention about programs and things that are being done in Israel itself. I'm presuming with Israelis, that is going on with Aish Torah, which is a hard group to deal with. On the one hand, if you do get them to become observant, they can open up a sefer because they understand the language. But there's, with all of the politics there between the observant community and the non-observant community, you probably have more of a wall that you have to get past in order to reach a non-observant Israeli than you do here when we're dealing with Jews who aren't observant. But nevertheless, you mentioned that there are things happening in Israel. Could you let us know about what those things are?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're actually right the way you framed that question and the conversation. In Israel, it is not simple with Israelis because everyone has an opinion about Judaism. Whereas in North America, you can meet a lot of people that aren't just exposed to Judaism. So they're open to anything almost, And in Israel, there is no separation of church and state as there is in America. Canada, a little more complicated, but generally we keep them a little more separate. And in Israel, it just, you run into all the time. It's very, very complex and complicated. So we have something called Aish Israel, right? Aish Israel. And they have many programs. I'll tell you two of the best programs that we run. One of them is called Imahot, which means mothers with meaning. They have middle-aged women across Israel, mostly, secular women who haven't really necessarily had religious experiences, who have joined with us to learn how to become leaders. And we bring them to Aish for Shabbatot, and we bring them there, and we have all kinds of programs where we do bas mitzvah programs where they'll bring their daughters to the old city. And you wouldn't believe how many Israelis have not been to the Kotel, the Western Wall. It's really amazing. We do a program every year called Slicha B'Atika. We do slichos, right, at the Western Wall in Aish. We get over 1,000 Israelis a night. This year it's going to be obviously very different, but we get over 1,000 Israelis. Many of them come as part of tour groups, to Jerusalem because it's that time of year, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and they'd like to see the Western Wall. So this Mothers in Meeting has been absolutely outstanding. We have branches all over Israel. And, I always tell the story, one of our great leaders in that. She was a model, and her husband was a general in the Israeli army. They live in Tel Aviv, 4 kids, and they just, now they're incredible. We use them for everything. I rely on them all the time. But I remember in the beginning, they were driving someplace. They were going to Tel Aviv. It was somewhere around Tel Aviv. It was one of their kids' birthdays to celebrate. And the mom announces that Rabbi Itil Golvich, one of our great educators, bilingual educators, Rabbi Itil Golvich is speaking on the weekly Torah portion. I'm putting on Bluetooth. Everyone keep quiet. And they're sitting in the car, and they're listening to his shiur, his class. So that's been amazing. One of the other programs we have, I'll just mention, and we have many, many more, but has been the Triumph Leadership Program, where we took 40 Israelis, all post-army, and they had all done special units. We had, I think it was like 250 or 300 applicants, and we put them through a leadership program in Israel, and then we took them to the States, to New York for 10 days. And it was unbelievable, the most incredible, they're all, secular backgrounds, and they met with all these business people. It's very interesting. They met with literally billionaires who would tell them how important the Jewish people are. These guys, they want to know about business, and the businessmen want to tell them about Judaism. It was just an incredible experience. Matter of fact, today, you can look on Facebook, Shimmy Kaufman, who heads up, is executive director of Aish Israel. Today, they were with Boogie Herzog, the head of the Jewish agency. And he was blown away by the program, because they've been doing everything Zoom, and they had a Zoom call with all these young Israelis. And the whole point of the program is to teach them Jewish entrepreneurship. See a problem, solve a problem. That's Aish philosophy. So you have all these Israeli, one of them, I got to tell you, this is amazing. She created a program for girls that couldn't have a bat mitzvah because of Corona, bas mitzvah, right? So she was connected to South Africa, other countries. So what did she do? She got a hold of Gal Gadot. I don't know if you're familiar with Gal Gadot. In Israel, there is no one bigger than Gal Gadot, right? Also known as Wonder Woman, right? And Gal Gadot said mazel tov to these bas mitzvah girls. And it was like this incredible thing. But that came from these secular Israeli millennials who are just out there to change the world. And that program, what I think is going to happen, just as an example, it started with this core of Israelis. If Corona wasn't happening, it would be much more advanced. But the whole goal is to take, 40 from Israel, 40 from New York, 40 from Toronto, 40 from LA, 40 from Mexico, from different cities, converge, and have them get to meet each other. Because one of the best parts of that program were the Israelis meeting the Aish New York millennials and get to know each other and connect. So that's the type of stuff that we're going to do more of. But those are just 2 programs in Israel But I think Aish has got a tremendous future in Israel.
It certainly sounds like it, and some special programs. Well, one of the things that people do know about Aish in Israel is that it has the most prime location, being, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the photograph behind you is actually taken from Aish Torah. Being, the institution closest to the Kosel and to the center of the Jewish world, center of the world, according to the Medrash. And now you've got I guess it's a museum, is it called? Certainly a center place where people can go, anything from going up on the roof where they can overlook the Kotel and the Harabais, but also an interesting tour throughout the building. And every week, I look in your email, and until recently with COVID, you'd always had a different celebrity or very famous person or political leader who had stopped in at Aish, and you had a picture of them and there was a discussion with them. Perhaps you could tell us about one or two of those very extraordinary people, and maybe something interesting that happened when they came to visit. I know I saw pictures, of rock stars and of politicians from all over the world. So, but there's certainly, you're there. So perhaps you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it is. As they say in the real estate business, location. It is unbelievable. It's spectacular. People go up there. One of the most special relationships we have is with the American Embassy. As you know, the United States moved the embassy to Jerusalem courageously in the last couple of years. And if you ask the ambassador, Ambassador Friedman, what is your second home in Jerusalem, he'll say Aish Torah. We host them for events all the time. And, I gave a key to, as a matter of fact, the two of the deputy ambassadors, one of them was an Aish alumnus, one of them was a close friend of mine. And I'd give him keys to the building. And one of them told me, Ari Lightstone, that, when he has time in a meeting, someone's here from America, he will run them over to the roof. He has his own key. He'll run them to the roof. And he told me recently stories. Someone in the State Department, a woman in the State Department, he brought up there and she just burst into tears, just so moved at what she was seeing. So it's really incredible. We hosted Vice President Pence was there recently. But I'll tell you, we had the Secretary of Treasury of the United States, a fellow by the name of Mnuchin, Secretary Mnuchin. And what they tell us is they come down and it's very organized, right? The Secret Service comes to check out your building, and it's very intense. And they come and they say, okay, well, let me tell you what's going to happen. Secretary Mnuchin is going to come here. You'll take a 5-second picture with him. And then we were hosting a lot of CEOs of major tech companies, Mobileye and all kinds of other tech companies. He was going to go, Secretary of Treasury was going to go into a meeting with them, right? So first I'll just say, and this is a little bit humorous, I tell the embassy, I say, would you like us to arrange parking by the Kotel? No, we have it, no problem, right? So they come in with 6 SUVs, right? They let 2 SUVs into the Kotel Plaza, and then the guard shuts the gate right on the ambassador and the Secretary of Treasury. They say, what are you doing? So this is Israel. I mean, I hope many of you have probably been there before, right? The guy says, they only told me 2. He said, you just shut it on the Secretary of Treasury of the United States. So they get into an argument. In the end, they let 1 more car through. The Secret Service, goes running up around the other side. It was a total balagan. I turned to the ambassador and said, I'll handle the parking next time, okay? Israel's its own special place. But what I wanted to tell you is that we get up to the Chihuly. Those of you know, we have this amazing sculpture on the 5th floor of the Chihuly. And we get over there, and we're taking our quick picture of the whole thing. And also the Secretary of Treasury, he spots the view out our porch. And he makes a beeline right out to the porch. And he's sitting there, and I was there with Rabbi Yatil Govach and myself, we're there with him. And he starts to ask us, and he's a Jewish fellow. He's not, not particularly affiliated, but a Jewish fellow. And he asked us every question you can imagine about the first temple, the second temple, eventually where the third temple will be. We took out an app to show him what it looked like. We're sitting there for 20 minutes, right, overlooking, learning Torah with the Secretary of Treasury, explaining him the laws of the temple, of the Beis Hamikdash, and his staff is going crazy because they have every multi-gazillion billion-dollar CEO waiting to meet with him, but he just wants to understand the Beis Hamikdash. And for me, that was such a surreal, awesome moment to understand that it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the most famous person in the world, or you could be just a schlepper. Everyone everyone's heart is connected to the Temple Mount, to Harabayas, to the Western Wall. And it was, in those types of experiences, well, you'll find the most famous people coming by, and it just all drops. They just want to understand where they are. They want to understand God. They want to understand, like, because they have a sense that that's where he is. We did the wedding of the Speaker of the Knesset, Yuli Edelstein. Now he's not Speaker. I think he's the Minister of Health now. And he, unfortunately, he's a widower. He got remarried, and his wife came over from Russia. And she said, why did she want the wedding overlooking, the temple? She said she came over from Russia, totally secular, knew nothing about Judaism. She walked up to the Western Wall, and she burst into tears and couldn't control her sobbing. And she said, when I get married one day, this is where I want to get married. And so she came and she got married on the roof of Aish Torah. And we could spend all night with the stories, but people are moved by that location.
Yeah, there's no question. It's an extraordinary location. It's one that one could not pick a better place to put any Jewish institution, but certainly Aish Torah, which the bottom line of Aish Torah is building Jewish identity, and where else are you going to have a better Jewish identity than the Kosel? And it's just really an extraordinary location. Now, many tour groups, like all different types of tour groups, be it ones that are affiliated with JWRP or with all of the other organizations that bring people, many of them stop at Aish Torah, not just for the view and not just to see the building, but also that they participate with, in some of the programs within Aish Torah, and they get to hear some of the speakers. And I find from hearing from them that their interactions with the speakers and with the people in Aish Torah is one of the attractions that they have. In fact, even if they have a group that can't come to Jerusalem for whatever reason, they'll often gravitate to get one of the speakers who comes from Aish Torah, who's affiliated with Aish Torah. And do you find that to be the case, that there's all these different types of institutions, and not, I only know of the observant ones, but I'm sure that there must be others as well that perhaps you could mention to us?
Oh, hundreds of institutions, look, I have to tell you something, and I say this all the time, and I mean this with all my heart and soul. Aish may technically own the building, but it's not our building. We really believe that building belongs to Jewish people, and we treat it like it belongs to Jewish people. And, on the average Friday night before Corona, and God willing after Corona, we can host 11 or 12 different groups in that building for Shabbat dinner on Friday night. They go to the Kotel Experience and they come to us. And so, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of groups come and utilize that building. And that's what we're there for. It's our pleasure. In terms of our speaker, the speakers of Aish Torah are world class. They're just absolutely stupendous at giving over content in a way that's articulate, entertaining, meaningful, deep, and passionate. And that's what people see. It's interesting because when Corona hit, we had to shut the building around Purim time. We had to decide what to do. And we basically took a lot of our classes and we shifted them online, and we created something called Aish TV, which would go along with Aish.com, which would just be getting our classes out. And thank God it was wildly, wildly successful, to the point where we're right now, we're embarking on a project where we're probably going to put a recording studio and a television studio in the building, because we have so many charismatic teachers and the ability for people like we're doing right here. I was with family members downstairs. I said, oh, it's time to go upstairs and talk to Toronto, right? The whole world's changed, and therefore we want to do that. I was just talking to one of the great fans of Aish Torah. Some of you may know him, a fellow by the name of Mark Levine. Mark Levine is the number 4 radio show host in America. He's on Fox News, gets about 15 million listeners a day to his show, and just a terrific guy. He came, I had Shabbat dinner with him. He came at Berkowitz an hour. We've become very close, and I just think the world of him. But he's been giving me a lot of advice on doing it. First, I'm a novice. I said, oh, we're going to do a recording studio and like a television studio. He's like, together? I think, yeah, Chris, he says, there's 2 separate things. And then we started to talk about it, and he said to me, he says, look, if you want to do this right and you want to do TV, you have to have 2 cameras. They're going to cost $15,000 each, and people tell you that's a lot of money, but you have to decide, so it's interesting because a fellow like him, I can't tell you how busy he is. I was at the White House for the White House Hanukkah party this past year, And I was sitting schmoozing with him because we're so friendly with Aish, and and right at the start, the president gets up to speak. He says, "Where's Mark Levin? Where's Mark Levin? Come up here!" And he gives him the mic. That's that's the level he's at. But he really cares about his Judaism. He really cares about his Judaism. He cares about the Jewish people. And so it's just amazing when you can engage in this level of conversation where he knows we have good speakers and stuff. It's like, okay, well, how do we get it out there? And he's offering me his engineer. He's offering me advice, And so I think that what you're going to see from Aish Torah is this ability to get our content around the world in a very, very serious, good way.
Well, it's wonderful to see how Aish is really grabbing on to what's happening, all of the technology and so forth, and using the opportunity that they meet all of the extraordinary people, and to be able to use those connections to better the Jewish people worldwide. So it's certainly amazing to see. I know that even we take Aish.com sort of for granted nowadays, but it was cutting edge when it came out. There were very few people were on the web, and certainly no Jewish things were on the web. Many of the institutions were very, the relationship was tenuous with using the World Wide Web. And Aish Torah came out so strong, and it has to be one of the largest and most profound sites in the world today for Jewish information. I know that when you Google something, if it's not the top thing that comes up, something on Aish.com, it's the second thing. It's quite extraordinary. So if Aish TV takes it to the next level, where we can where we can continue doing what we're doing now in COVID, it'll be an amazing opportunity for people to not have to leave their home. You don't always have to go to Israel and go away for 3 weeks or a month or give up work, and still be able to become more educated. And it's something I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing. So let's take a bit of a detour and speak a bit about what happens in North America. We have all of these branches in North America. We mentioned St. Louis being the first, which actually I knew it just doesn't compare to Toronto, and all of the branches in Toronto. And but through the years, it used to be that Rabbi Weinberg would, you'd invite him, and he would come in and he'd speak for you, and he would participate, and there would be some of the other fellows who worked there who would offer some assistance. But now that Aish Global has become a bit more formalized, can you tell me what benefits do the local branches receive from being a part of Aish Global as a worldwide institution?
It's an interesting question. One of the challenges when Rav Noach passed away was the branches were really tethered to him, and essentially we all had the same name, but they were all Talmidim. And when you're a student of someone, that's your Rebbe, that's your connection. And they subtly started to float away over the years. And when I came in, one of the first, about 3 weeks into my tenure, I went to Denver. There was like a branch conference that was put together by the branches. And I remember there was a question, what is the relationship between Jerusalem and the branches? And as if to say, is there one, type of thing. And I remember saying at the time, I said, the job of Aish Jerusalem is to serve the branches, because the branches are there on the front lines. And there was a fellow, Yitz Greenman, one of the great heroes of Aish Torah. He physically fell off his chair when I said that. It was like, and since then, on a personal level, I've traveled. I've done a tremendous amount of travel. I have quite a busy schedule. And I've spent a lot of time and become very, very close friends with a lot of the branch heads. We have done a lot of work to help a lot of them solve certain issues and move forward. Let me tell you what's coming. And this is a bit of a tsunami. We've engaged in a process this summer, and basically revisiting how we manage Aish Jerusalem and what is the vision. What's our vision really for the institution? And we set a 10-year goal. Now we just started giving this over to some of the branches. I did on Friday. I was speaking to a bunch of the branches, and we're continuing now to kind of roll this out to bounce it off them. But our plan is basically that we would like to get 3 million, I would say unaffiliated, but not really particularly affiliated Jews studying Torah, engaged in Torah in a meaningful way. 3 million. That's a real number. And so I got to tell you something, and I said this to Elliot Matthias, who's my partner on this. First of all, that came from Rav Berkowitz. Rav Berkowitz said, "Rav Berkowitz, what do you want us to do?" This is what he wants us to do. And I have had trouble sleeping for the last week. Just, focus on that number in 10 years that we have to get 3 million people. And that strategy is going to have to involve not only all the branches in a very real way and a very exciting way, because I think, for a lot of us out there, I don't know about you, but where are we headed? I always quote the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, right? Where the Cheshire Cat says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So I've always been very much like, where do you want me to wind up? And we threw this 3 million number out there. We said, oh my gosh, how are we going to get there? And of course, I'm thinking of my good friend, Rabbi Goldstein from South Africa, who you had on board, on your show recently. And I'm thinking of all these things and the branches, okay, we're going to sit down and get really serious. And we're going to have to provide them with curriculum. And we're going to have to train rabbis for them to bring, there's a lot that needs to get geared up. And I think that whereas the last couple of years, although I spent a lot of time with the branches and we've done a lot of rebuilding the foundation of Jerusalem, this is phase 2, where Aish goes global and says that if Jews, and as Berkowitz puts it, we want to redefine Jewish identity, right? People define Jewish identity as, I don't know, you're born Jewish or, I don't know, you have chicken soup. Jewish identity is someone learning Torah, studying Torah. That's what Aish Torah believes, right? It doesn't matter what the Torah is, doesn't matter who you're learning with, but you got to engage. Because if you're not engaged, then you can't connect to the Almighty, which is the ultimate goal. So within those kind of things, I think you're going to find super engagement with the branches. That's something that we're rolling out now. And hopefully, really providing them with a tremendous amount of resources to get to that goal.
Oh, it certainly sounds like you've got a lot of work ahead of you, but important work and
ahead of us.
Yeah. And so, but you've got some great partners in accomplishing it, and so certainly it's something that that when I chose to 15 years ago now to dedicate my career working with Aish Torah, it was really for the general ideas of what you just spoke about. I didn't have the specific ideas, but the general ones, which is to try to change the world and to get the average Jew to understand the importance of Torah in their life, and how it can make a world of difference and improve your life, improve your marriage, improve everything that you do. And Aish Torah's involvement with that has always been very important, and something that now that you're solidifying it and coming up with specific programs and methods, I really think that it's going to work a lot better, because now each institution can buy into this, and each institution will be given, the ability to, of ideas of what to do, because not everybody can come up with every program for every place. So that's wonderful. I'm very glad to hear it. As you know, my aspect department within Aish Torah in Toronto is a shul. And we see our shul, our main purpose of the shul is really, we do outreach ourselves, where many of our members are not observant, and we try to introduce them to Judaism. Many of our members who are observant are involved with reaching out to others and having Sukkot parties at their home and Hanukkah parties at their home and bringing people in. And also a home for the people who have been touched by Aish Torah, and where they'll feel at home, where they feel welcome, where they feel that they're a part of it. Because if they have to go into the general synagogue world, it's often they have expectations of the community and then that they don't understand or they don't realize, and they have different ways of dealing with it. For instance, I know I spoke to you once about it, and I know you found it interesting because you printed it. When I was asked, what was the number one question that I get on Passover, right? And people say about Shmura Matzah, about doing this, about that. The number one question I always get is, how early can I start the Seder? And it's not because I'm dealing with older people. It's because virtually every person in my shul has parents and many family members who are not observant. And they're used to starting their Seder at 5 o'clock. And we start our Seder at 9:30, 9:45 at night. And most of them are finished by then, right? It's like the early seating and the late seating in a theater. So they really, it's very, very different for them. And we find that it's a real center place for the Bali Tshuva to be able to feel at home. And I know that was been the same in Los Angeles and St. Louis and other places, We certainly feel to be an important department within what Aish Torah does. And I know that your efforts and Rabbi Berkowitz's efforts are something that we've adopted in many of the things that you've spoken about, and we're looking forward to adopting many more, and to be able to go into the future, to try to help reach those 3 million people and to find other areas that we can do something with. But I know that when I speak to my members, being a part of Aish Torah is extremely important to them, and it's extremely important to me, and it's because of the efforts that you've done and that others have done and are doing that makes that happen. So with that, since this is really me interviewing you, not me giving speeches, as we're getting to the end, is there perhaps a parting message that you'd like to leave with everybody here, so something that that they can hold on to at the end of our talk?
Absolutely. In the end of the day, it goes back to Rav Noach and his philosophy. And one of the most beautiful things he ever said was, when a person learns Aleph, they have to teach Aleph. Meaning, it is no such thing as a Jew that I just get. I need to give also. And as I point out to many people, when a baby is born, there's no more selfish being in the world than a baby, right? When they're tired, they cry. When they're hungry, they cry. When they go to the bathroom, they cry. I said, at some point, you get older and you go from being selfish to selfless. Right? That's your challenge. And especially as an adult, some adults, unfortunately, stick with that baby theme their whole lives. But we hope as Jews, we want to become selfless. We want to be givers. We want to be givers, not always takers. And my message to the Aish nation is that we need to learn Torah with Jews, and we can't be embarrassed to learn Torah with Jews. Like I said, we had a Secretary of Treasury at Aish Torah, and we were sitting there learning all about the Beis HaMikdash with him. And you'd be shocked and surprised how many Jews that that are not connected, that all of us know, that we just need to offer them to study. One of Rabbi Goldstein, Rabbi Warren Goldstein, you had on, was a very close friend of mine. And I love the man, really love the man. I've spent a lot of time with him over the years. He developed a whole Pirkei Avos curriculum. And originally when he developed it, he said, okay, this is going to be for religious people to learn with not religious people. And then he said, no way, that's not what I'm doing. I'm creating a curriculum that not religious people can learn with not religious people. Secular people can learn with secular people, right? We just have to make Torah open to people, because look, the ultimate goal in our lives is God, is the Almighty, right? I tell this to people all the time. Torah and mitzvos is just a means to an end. You got to get to God. If you do not get to God, I don't care if you're Orthodox or you're not Orthodox, whatever. If you don't wind up at God, you've totally missed the boat. And we need people to have a relationship with Hashem. And the way to create that relationship is just going to be the study of Torah. That's why we're called Aish Torah, right? And so my parting message is, number one, is that I know your Kehillah intimately. I spent Shabbos in your Kehillah. I know how warm they are, how caring they are, how I mean, they don't open this message, they live this message. But I will tell them, we got to even bring in more of the Orthodox to help us in this mission. We got to bring in more people, because we got to get to 3 million people in 10 years. Because if we could do that, worldwide, it's probably approximately 15 million Jews, so let's say they want to say 10% Orthodox, let's say 2 million of them are Orthodox, so to speak, right? So then they still got 30. If we can influence 3 million Jews over the next 10 years, we could change the entire nation. We could change everything about Judaism. We could turn ourselves around. We just on Tisha B'Av read about Yoshiyahu. Yoshiyahu was a king for 18 years before he saw Torah. He was the king of Israel, in Israel, for 18 years. And when he saw Torah, he said, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And he started a whole Baal Tshuva movement, right? It's possible. It is possible to change the world. It is possible to bring Jews back to God, but only if we all work together. And, as brothers and sisters, whether we're in Toronto, Mexico, Buenos Aires, New York, Yerushalayim, England, we're all brothers and sisters. And we have got to figure out how to work together, and we gotta get it done, because that's what our Father in heaven needs from us.
Well, I think that those are great words for us to conclude our evening, and something for all of us to carry with us. We all have a role to play, collectively as a part of our shul and independently as individuals and families. Many of them do, but I'm sure that your words will help add to that and carry us into the future so that people will continue to reach out and care, love, and educate all of the other Jewish brothers and sisters that we have here in Toronto and throughout the world. And I think that everyone here will join with me in saying how fortunate Aish HaTorah is to have a person with your passion and your education and your abilities to be able to help Aish HaTorah carry out into the future and hopefully into the next generation and the coming of the Mashiach. I want to thank you very much for your time today, for your ongoing friendship to me and to our community. And we look forward to what we hope will be many, many weeks, months, and years where we'll be working together to be able to make a difference in the Jewish world. And thank you again very much.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. You're like a brother to me, and you know how much I love you and your family. And God willing, we'll be together soon, as soon as the borders open up.
All right, we'll look forward to it. Thank you very much. And we want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Stay tuned. We're going to have more. Our next speaker will be Rabbi Daniel Korupkin. He's the rabbi at the Bayit, but he's also the president of the Rabbinical Council of America, the largest association of rabbis in the world. And he will be speaking to us next. And we'll look forward to that. Again, thank you very much, Rabbi Burg. It's been a pleasure having you. Everyone else have a wonderful night. And we hope that we'll take Rabbi Burg's words to heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.